All right, great. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Pakistan Dreamin'. I'm Melissa Shepard, and I am going to present to you event-driven integration with MuleSoft Anypoint Code Builder. First of all, I'd like to thank our sponsors for helping us put on this amazing event. I wish I could be there in person, hopefully next year. This year just didn't work out. I'm the managing director of architecture and delivery at a Salesforce partner called SRA. Also, here's my Twitter handle and my email if you would like to get in contact with me. And this is also using the PubSub API. Forgot to mention that. So a little bit about me. I mentioned I am the co-founder and a managing director at SRA. I'm a Salesforce certified technical architect. I'm also B2B and B2C solution architect certified. This is wrong. I have 35 certifications now: Golden Hoodie, MuleSoft Ambassador, Trailblazer Mentor, but they ended that program. I'm also the founder of a nonprofit for skilling up architects called Scale Up Arcs, also the Boston Architect User Group leader, founder and admin of the Architect Ohana Slack, and I'm also the organizer of Northeast Dreamin' and Your Architect Dreamin'. Actually, it's just Architect Dreamin' because we're going to put on other events in other parts of the world as well. So the one we've been putting on has been in Europe called Your Architect Dreamin'. So if anyone is interested in that, you can find us on LinkedIn and see when we're going to be having our next event. So first of all, let's just go over what is event-driven architecture. And I'm going to give you a little bit of information from Salesforce Well Architected. I am a Salesforce Well Architect ambassador. I run Salesforce Well Architected workshops at both Dreamforce and Trailblazer DX for the Salesforce Architect Relations team. So I really love talking about Well Architected because I believe that it's bringing more architect knowledge to the general Salesforce public. So anyone can start to learn about architecture and learn how to be an architect. So according to Well Architected, event-driven architecture support the efficient production and consumption of events, which represent state changes. So this is a way you can easily integrate data asynchronously between multiple systems. So when you have near real-time integrations, event-driven architectures are preferred. You can build more flexible connections between the systems. So that means you can, maybe replace one system without having to change that whole architecture and just change that connection of that system to the architecture, and that's it. You don't have to change your entire integrations end to end, which is nice. That's the flexibility you get with these event-driven architectures. Also, it enables the system to provide near real-time updates to one or more other systems. So it's not just dependent on sending something to one system and then another. You can send out some changes and then it can get broadcast to multiple systems at once. That's another great advantage of this kind of architecture. So that also enables you to support processes that take place across multiple systems. So you can get a lot more flexibility being able to work with multiple systems as opposed to just one. So here's a very popular pattern. This is from the Well Architected documentation. This is at architect.salesforce.com under event-driven architecture, and it's the publish subscribe pattern. So this is an example of how you have multiple systems and they are publishing events to something called an event bus. So you can see here we've got event A, event B, and these go out onto the event bus. So then you have other systems that are subscribing to these events. So you can see system 1 is publishing event A, but it's also subscribing to event B, and same with system 2 and system 3. So you have these other systems that are subscribing to event A, but then you have another system that's publishing event B. So each system can decide what event it cares about listening for, and then it knows what to do with that data once it receives that event. So a little bit more about this pattern. There is no direct connection between publishers and subscribers. So you have that event bus that's in the middle. So that is something you would accomplish using something like MuleSoft or some other integration middleware. So you have this middleware in between these multiple systems instead of going point to point, which would be the source system to the target system. That's not an efficient way to integrate systems. So systems may publish or subscribe to multiple types of events as well, not just one. So it can listen for whatever it wants. And the same system can be both a publisher and a subscriber. As you saw in this diagram, event A is being published by system 1, but then it's also consuming event B being published by system 6. So when should you use event-driven architectures? And here's some common use cases. So you might need to have near real-time notifications of things that are happening. Maybe you need to have parallel processing. Also, when you have high volume reads and writes. That's when stuff is happening with a lot of data. You can kind of circumvent some of the issues you have with large data volumes by going to event driven, which is going to give you more of the asynchronous the asynchronous versus synchronous. So you get a lot more governor limits on Salesforce, you get a lot more flexibility, you get less things like lockings and timeouts when you go asynchronous with event-driven architectures. And you can send the same data to different systems. So you only have to send it once, and then you don't have to send multiple copies of it. So it's that one set of data, and then multiple systems are consuming it. And then it's also great when you're frequently introducing new systems or devices into an IT landscape. So you can think about like IoT devices. You might have them coming into a network and hooking up to the network. Maybe they're getting installed at someone's house and they need to communicate with a network. So you just have this one event-driven architecture and they all hook in, and then they start knowing what to do and what to listen for and what data to receive once they're in there, and you don't have to rebuild everything every time you connect a new device. And also mobile devices and systems that may be offline when changes occur. So it's another great thing about event-driven architecture. Usually you can queue up these events and changes, and then once a system is ready to receive them, it can go and get all the events back in time from when it stopped listening to events before. So that's actually something that MuleSoft can do when you're using platform events with Salesforce. So when you have Salesforce going to other systems, you want to take these things into consideration. You want to use something such as an ESB, which I mentioned. That's that middleware. That's where you're going to get the event bus functionality. You want to use that where possible. And then for Salesforce, they have the new PubSub API for the publish and subscribe patterns. So many of you may be aware of platform events. So platform events do still work with the PubSub API. Previously, it was just the streaming API, but the PubSub API is something that's running off platform, but it's still under the hood. You don't know what's going on. You just connect to the PubSub API and you're receiving your platform events, but you're just getting higher limits and higher volumes and more scalability and flexibility there by using that API. And that is supported by MuleSoft now. So you can use your high volume platform events and change data capture. And these are preferred for publishing record and field changes out of Salesforce. So this is to send data from Salesforce out to other systems. A little bit about the Salesforce PubSub API. It's a single interface for publishing and subscribing to platform events and change data capture events. It's based on the gRPC API and HTTP2. And efficiently publishes and delivers binary event messages in the Apache Avro format. And it allows users to publish and subscribe to events, request schema, and request topic information all within this one API. And you also can author in familiar programming language. So previously with streaming API, you were using CometD, and so whatever language you wanted. This doesn't use CometD. So there's actually support for 11 programming languages, such as Python, Java, Node, and C++. So the benefits of the PubSub API. So it eradicates the need for building out a custom CometD streaming API client. So that's what I mentioned before. That is no longer there with PubSub API. It goes away. You can also control the flow of events with a pull subscription. You can also specify how many events to receive in a subscribe call based on event processing speed in the client. So if you need to maybe slow down because of your processing speed, you can control that through here. Also, it's real-time and it's highly performant data streaming. So because PubSub API is based on gRPC and HTTP2, it benefits from HTTP2 compression. So it's 7 to 10 times more performant than REST. That's actually very cool because REST was the big, newest, and greatest way to integrate with APIs when previously had been SOAP, but now we get HTTP2. Also, there's bi-directional streaming and increased security. So if anyone here is an architect, you care about security. That's one of the things at the forefront of your mind when building any integration. So how can we use this with MuleSoft? And this is something that I was very curious about. So I decided to dive in and start to figure it out. And that's why I'm presenting this to you today, because it was something that I really wanted to understand and know. I knew that there was a new PubSub API. How can it be used? And being a huge fan of MuleSoft, being a MuleSoft ambassador, I decided to figure it out using something that's really cool and really new with MuleSoft called Anypoint Code Builder. So within MuleSoft, you use the Salesforce PubSub API connector. So they make it so easy for you where you do not have to write the code to do this connection. It's all under the hood, done for you. You just use the connector and you just start listening to events via the PubSub API. So it gives the developers the benefit of the PubSub API without having to build that custom client. So it's a new connector that is purpose-built for event-driven integration. It also can work alongside the existing Salesforce connector, which many of you, if you are MuleSoft developers, you would be familiar with that. It subscribes to a Salesforce platform event or change data capture. It also publishes Salesforce platform events. So you can publish events back into Salesforce when integrating from other systems. If you would like to use that event-driven integration on your way back into Salesforce. You could also extend with a connector ecosystem. So something that's really cool about MuleSoft is it has all these pre-built connectors, and you can combine them to complete an entire job that you want to get done. So when you're building your orchestrations, you can just go into the Exchange and add all different kinds of connectors. So there's more than 200 Mule connectors to a number of ecosystems like even Azure and SAP. And then within MuleSoft, you can transform and filter your payloads using data weave transforms, and that will help you seamlessly move data between systems using different data structures and formats. So that is one of the great advantages of MuleSoft is you can do all that work within that middleware, and you're not doing it in Salesforce or in these other systems. So let's take a look at how we can use this connector to listen for Salesforce platform events and subscribe to them with this a code builder example. So first in Salesforce, you want to define a platform event. So you would go into your setup, you would look for platform events, and you would click new platform event. And then you would define it and add the fields in that you want to send in your platform event. So I'm just doing something basic with order. So I have an order ID and an order number that's going to be stored in this platform event. So then this is something anyone can do. You can go and sign up for a free trial MuleSoft account, and then you can get into the Code Builder web version. So there is actually a desktop version now. It's basically Visual Studio Code with a with the MuleSoft Code Builder add-in. So I haven't played around with that yet, but that's something that I plan to do so I can start to understand how to do this stuff within Visual Studio Code. But the web version is still very similar to Visual Studio Code. So once you get in there, you would go to Code Builder Web and you would click this Launch Web IDE button. So then on the left, you see a menu here, and there's a little MuleSoft logo. You click on that, and then you want to click on Develop an Integration. So once you're here, you want to give your project a name, and then give it a location that you're going to store it within your folder structure. And then you will click Create Project. So then you can see it creates an XML file here on the left. And this is what's really cool about Code Builder. It's going to become very familiar to Salesforce developers. So you're going to be living in an IDE that's like Visual Studio Code, or with a desktop version, it is Visual Studio Code. And then you can build a flow or a subflow. So you want to click on your XML file, and then on the right side, you want to click on Flow. And then you see the Flow Builder screen. So this is cool. So you'll see where it says here that you want to add a component. So what I did is I added the subscribe channel listener, and we will go over how this gets added in just a second. So this is what's going to listen for the Salesforce platform events. And then you can see here on the right, it starts to create some XML code for you. So what you want to do is you want to, it's the same command, Control-Shift-P, as you would do in Visual Studio Code. And you would look for MuleSoft Import Asset from Exchange. So you're going to be pulling this PubSub API connector in from the MuleSoft Exchange. And then once you go there, you're going to choose connector. And then within that is you can choose your Salesforce PubSub API connector. See just below that, there's also the old Salesforce connector, the legacy one, but you want to choose the PubSub API one. You click on that. And then it will start to add, then it will add everything you need to get started. So then you go back over to the XML on the right side and you start typing in Salesforce. So you'll see when you're typing that in, the IntelliSense pops up Salesforce pub sub, and then you can choose that connector so you can start configuring it. So this is how you're going to create your config file. And you want to do this before the opening flow bracket in the XML that's on the right side. And then you want to add the connection. So it creates these two XML tags. So you want to give this a name, and then you want to start typing Salesforce in between the tags. And then you want to choose the whatever kind of security authentication you're going to use. So you've got basic connection, you've got config with OAuth connection, you got a JOP connection, OAuth user password connection, you get SAML connection. So these are all different ways you can authenticate back into Salesforce for MuleSoft to communicate with Salesforce. And then you can test the connection, which is pretty cool. So there's a little test connection button up here. So I set it up with just some basic authentication just to do it really quick with my username and password. That's not best practice. I don't recommend that. I would recommend setting up OAuth and a connected app. And then you want to add your HTTP listeners for this to actually work. So this is the HTML that the XML that comes out when you add your listener. So that listener gets added when you go in here and you choose the PubSub channel listener. So you want to go into the XML tags where it says flow, start typing Salesforce, and then you want to choose Salesforce PubSub and then subscribe channel listener. So here you can see we have the channel listener added, and here under channel name, you want to give it the channel name of that platform event that you created. So the format here is /event/ the name of your platform event. And then you're going to have your config reference here. So the config reference is what we set up in the first step. That's the configuration that's in, that's just above the flow tag that we went through. This is it's up here where it says Salesforce PubSub and then :PubSub config. That's where you test your connection. You can see my basic connection information is in there. And then you're going to reference that down here under the channel listener. So you can see it's called SFDC PubSub test. We should see that again here. Yep. So here, that config reference is SFDC PubSub test, which I defined before. So you're defining your configuration for connecting to Salesforce, and then within your channel listener, you're actually using that configuration, and you're telling it what platform event you want to listen for. And then here you can see I've added the Salesforce PubSub replay option. So I'm just choosing this basic earliest. Just give me the earliest event that's been published, and it's just going to be using that. And then the last thing you want to do so that you can see this actually working is you want to add a logger to the layout. So this is how I was able to see my data coming over from Salesforce when I was publishing platform events. So you add this on the flow, that flow canvas. You can click the plus button and you can just look for logger. And then it creates this XML here, once again, on the right side that you can then see, and then you can modify it. So I just have the information, the level of info, the name is logger, the doc ID is something it puts in there. And then there's a message. So in here, I have it, this is the event info. And then you have to have this, here, the $, and then the bracket with payload. That's going to show you the payload of what is in the platform event when it comes over from Salesforce. So testing it out. So you want to go to your menu within Anypoint Code Builder, and you want to go to run, and then you want to click start debugging. So this is what's going to then get you listening for the platform event from Salesforce. You can see the data coming over. And once you are in debug mode, you'll see a whole bunch of stuff come up in the terminal down below the flow screen. So here's your flow canvas at the top. We've got the XML we've been modifying on the right. The bottom is the terminal where all the output is happening. So once you are listening and it's successful, you want to go back to Salesforce and you want to trigger a platform event. So how I did that was I just had a flow that was built on the order record. So when I put the order in a specific status, that flow fired, and then it wrote to that platform event record that I created. And once the flow writes that platform event record, MuleSoft catches it over here. And you can see down below where the data is coming over from Salesforce. So you can see the event ID, you can see my payload. So this is the event info down here. It gives a replay ID, it gives a created date, created by, and then you can see this order number and order ID, which I had defined in my platform event, in which the flow then populated when it was triggered on the Salesforce side. So that is how you can build an end-to-end integration between Salesforce and MuleSoft using the PubSub API connector. I've included a bunch of resources because this is all new, and I would suggest anyone that does Salesforce development to start to learn how to do some of this MuleSoft stuff, because there's going to be a lot of transferable skills, and it's a lot of fun when you can start getting into system integrations and learning how to do some of this stuff where you can work between systems. And as an architect, integration is an area that I've always enjoyed. It's how I really got into architecture. So I always encourage anyone that wants to move into an architect role to really start to understand integration and even just play around with this stuff and get to know it well. So there's some resources here for the PubSub connector with MuleSoft. There's some resources here for Anypoint Code Builder. And also here's where you can ask questions about Anypoint Code Builder. And I suggest also playing around with the Visual Studio Code version and getting to know that the add-on that you bring into Visual Studio Code to make it work like Anypoint Code Builder. Also, there's some Salesforce Well Architected resources, as well as resources from the developer documentation on the PubSub API. Also, if you're interested in Well Architected and you're going to be going to Trailblazer DX or Dreamforce, I would check out some of the workshops that we have, because they're a lot of fun and they're interactive, and it gets you thinking like an architect and helping you to build that architect mindset. Also, some QR codes that I have here where you can start to upskill with MuleSoft. If you want to become a MuleSoft mentor, which is a step you've got to take before becoming an ambassador, that's how I started with MuleSoft. You can apply here. And then also there's a bunch of MuleSoft trainings and certifications if you want to start learning more and getting certified in that area. And then also you can join the MuleSoft community. There's actually a big thriving MuleSoft community that is very similar to Salesforce, and they're actually starting to come together more. That's kind of where my place is. I'm very involved in the Salesforce community and now really getting involved on the MuleSoft community and trying to bring them together a little bit more. And then also there are local MuleSoft meetup groups, just like the Salesforce user groups. So you can find out more about that here. And hopefully you enjoyed this and you got to learn a little bit more about MuleSoft and the new features that are coming and how you can start to get started yourself with learning MuleSoft a bit more and working with the Salesforce PubSub API. So thank you.
No. Okay, Melissa, I guess we have no questions. So
Okay.
we can bye-bye. Thank you.
And are these, do I need to get these slides to you to share with anyone? Because there's a lot of steps in here that I think people might want to follow. And there's also this resource links that they might want.
Yeah, you can go for them. Yeah.
Okay.
You
All
can.
right. I will share my slides so that everyone can have access to them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Enjoy your conference.